superhero ones. Anyways, this is the start of my new DC fan-made universe, starting with a Wonder Woman theme story, but without Wonder Woman. It's Paradise Island number 0.
Paradise Island 0, the island before the Wonder Woman. Before the world of man knew the name Wonder Woman, before the myths of heroes were carved into stone or whispered through centuries, there was only the island, hidden, untouched by modern war, and older than any remembered history. Far beyond mortal maps, beyond storm lines and cursed seas, lay a sanctuary later known to outsiders as Paradise Island, and to its own people as Themyscira. Themyscira, it was not yet the birthplace of legend, but a living world shaped by forces far older than any kingdom of men. On this island, life did not follow the rules of Earth as scholars would understand them. The oceans around it bent reality slightly, making navigation impossible for anyone not meant to arrive. The sky above shimmered with an unusual calm, as though the heavens themselves guarded what lay below. And within this protected world existed a species that no human record would ever properly classify. They were called the Kangas. At first glance, they resembled giant kangaroos, tall, muscular, built for movement and survival, but they were not earth animals. Their eyes carried an intelligent glow, not instinct alone, but awareness, memory, and culture. Their fur patterns shifted subtly, depending on mood, like living emotional ink written across their bodies. Their tails were not only for balance, but also functioned like sensory instruments, reading vibration through the ground itself. The Kangas had arrived on Themyscira long before recorded Amazon history began. Some legends among the earliest island guardians claimed they fell from the sky during a storm of light, an ancient migration lost to time, possibly even older than Olympus itself. Others believed they were shaped by the island itself, as if Themyscira had grown them the way forests grow trees. What was known for certain was this: the Kangas were not animals to be domesticated. They were partners in the island's ecosystem and silent guardians of its balance. The Amazons of this early age had not yet become the legendary warriors of later ages. They were still forming their identity, still defining their code, still learning the meaning of isolation from mankind. They lived among marble cliffs and wild forests, training in silence, building temples to forgotten gods, and watching the horizon for threats that never came, because something else already protected them. The Kangas. A young Amazon scout named Lysandra once described them as the island's moving memory. She meant that when the Kangas ran across the plains, it was as if the land itself remembered where it had been hurt and where it had healed. The Kangas lived in structured groups called Hopsworn clans, each clan tied to a specific region of the island. The Sunback clan lived near the Golden Cliffs, where sunlight struck the rock in constant warmth. Their fur carried streaks of bright amber and white, and they were known for speed, capable of crossing entire valleys in moments. The Deep Fern clan lived within dense forests where light barely touched the ground. Their bodies were darker, almost green-tinted, allowing them to vanish among shadows and vines. They were the scouts, the watchers, the silent messengers between Amazon settlements. The Stormstride clan lived near the jagged coastlines where waves crashed violently against stone. These Kangas were the largest and strongest, their bodies thick with muscle, trained by natural resistance to wind and tide. They were defenders, known to stand unmoving against storms that would break cliffs. And then there were the rare ones, the skybound Kangas, who were said to leap so high they touched the mist layer above the island. Some Amazons believed they could briefly disappear into clouds and return with knowledge no one else possessed. Despite their differences, all Kangas shared a single tradition, the Great Pulse Run. Once every cycle of the twin moons, the Kangas would gather across the island and run without destination. Not in chaos, but in synchronization. Thousands of bodies moving as one living current across plains, forests, and cliffs. The Amazons never interfered. They simply watched, because during the Great Pulse Run, something unusual happened. The island would respond. Rivers would shift slightly to cleaner paths. Broken stone would settle into more stable formations. Dangerous predators would retreat deeper underground. It was as if the Kangas were not just living on Themyscira, they were maintaining it. But peace, even in paradise, is never absolute. One cycle, The island changed. The skies above Themyscira dimmed for the first time in memory. Not with night, but with a strange metallic haze that pulsed like distant machinery. The Kangas felt it before anyone else. Their tails stiffened, their movements slowed, and their usual rhythmic harmony fractured into scattered, uncertain motion. The Deep Fern clan were the first to report it. Something foreign had brushed against the island's invisible boundary. The Amazons gathered in the Temple of Origin, debating whether it was a divine omen or a breach. They had no name for what they felt, only the instinct that something unnatural was trying to observe them. And then the Kangas reacted in a way they never had before. They stopped running. Across the island, thousands of Kangas froze in place simultaneously. Heads turned upward, muscles tightened. Their glowing eyes shifted from earthbound focus to the sky itself. Then, for the first time in their history, they gathered, not in motion, but in stillness. The Hopsworn clans converged at the island's central valley, forming a massive circle. At the center stood the oldest known Kanga, a Stormstride elder known as Varrock the Groundbreaker, whose fur had turned silver from age, and whose presence alone could quiet entire herds. Varrock did something no Kanga had ever done. He spoke, not in human language, but in resonant pulses felt through the ground and air, translated instinctively by the Amazons who stood nearby. "The island is being looked at," the message said. The Amazons did not understand from where, but they understood the danger. For the Kangas were not simply reacting to an external presence. They were recognizing something that did not belong to their world. Above the atmosphere, beyond perception, something vast and silent had aligned its attention toward Themyscira. The skybound Kangas leapt upward in response, vanishing into cloud cover, attempting to meet the unknown. For hours, they did not return. When they finally did, only 3 came back, and they were changed. Their fur patterns had turned pale, almost transparent. Their movements were slow, as if reality itself resisted their presence. They did not speak. They simply formed a symbol in the soil using their feet, a spiral shape breaking apart at the edges. The Amazons translated it as best they could. Something is testing the island's shield. That night, the Great Pulse Run did not occur. Instead, every Kanga gathered at the center of Themyscira and stood motionless, forming a living barrier around the Amazon settlements. Not attacking, not fleeing, waiting. The Amazons did the same. For the first time, the island was not divided into species or roles or clans. It was one body preparing for intrusion. And then, without warning, the sky flashed. Not lightning, not fire. Something sharper, like a tear in fabric that shouldn't exist. A ripple passed through the air. The ocean around Themyscira bent outward, as if something had pressed against reality from the outside. The Kangas responded instantly. They stomped the ground once. The sound was not loud, but it carried across the entire island, through stone, water, and air. It was a signal. The island itself answered. Hidden beneath Themyscira's surface, beneath temples, forests, and cliffs, something ancient awakened. Not a weapon, not a machine, but a living defensive memory embedded in the land itself. The ground glowed faintly with lines of energy that mirrored the paths the Kangas ran every cycle. The Amazons felt it in their bones. The Kangas had never been just inhabitants of the island. They were part of its defense system, and whatever was outside the sky was now being measured against that defense. The sky closed again. The tear vanished. Silence returned. But nothing on Themyscira believed the threat was gone. The Kangas remained standing at the center of the island for 3 full days without moving, as if ensuring the sky would not reopen. Only after the 3rd sunrise did Varrock finally shift his weight. He did not declare victory.
He simply turned toward the horizon and began to walk. One by one, the Kangas followed. The Great Pulse Run began again. But this time, it was not celebrated. It was vengeance. Because Paradise Island had learned something it had never knew before. It was not visible. It was not invisible. It was being watched. And somewhere beyond the veil of the sky, something was learning how to look back.